Good afternoon. My name is Andy Kahn, Director of Victim Services, Crime Stoppers of Houston. I'm joined by the U.S. Marshal's Office, Marshal Alfredo Perez, and I'm joined by the parents of murder victims, Savannah Paschal. I'm saying the name right. 7 months ago, we came to you and asked for the public's help in locating fugitive Trent Paschal. Paschal was wanted on numerous warrants, bond violations, was out on bond for murder, wanted on several felonies in Harris County, and he joined a dubious list as a fugitive from at large. We never gave up. We put this out every opportunity that we could because we knew the public, somebody out there was going to know something, where he was and where he was hiding. And finally, that came in over the weekend. It's bittersweet, obviously, for the family, and they will talk to you about that. You know, obviously, someone who's been working with surviving family members of homicide for 30-some-odd years, yeah, you want the person brought in and face justice. Yeah, you want the person shackled and walking in to a courtroom or walking into custody here. But, you know, that didn't happen, so we're going to deal with it and move on. But the bigger question that Crime Stoppers has is how many other Trent Paschals are out there? How many other bond fugitives, people who've been on bond and have forfeited their bond and are wanted, remain out there? Months ago, we had an HPD officer, William Jeffrey, that was murdered trying to serve a warrant on another defendant wanted for bond forfeiture. Within the past year, there have been 6 shootouts involving law enforcement officers and wanted felon bond forfeiture defendants. That's just in Harris County. It's disturbing to us that we do not know how many other Trent Paschals are out there. I would think it's time that we can take what happened here and hopefully take this negative and turn it into a positive and get some answers out there. Crime Stoppers would love to profile wanted bond forfeiture fugitives, but we got to know who they are. And there's no reason in the world that we shouldn't be blasting like we did with Trent Paschal on a daily basis out to the public and get these people back in custody. With that, I'm going to ask U.S. Marshal Perez to come up here and talk to you about what they know about the case and whatever information that they can share at this time.
Deputy Marshal Alfredo Perez, ALFREDO PEREZ. First off, I'd like to say, Ms. Kitchens, U.S. Marshal is really sorry about your daughter. That's the bottom line. You know, we're really sorry that happened. And we're also sorry for the family of Trent Paschal. On New Year's Eve, about 11:15 in Marion County, Florida, the dispatcher received a 911 call, basically a tip saying that this Trent Paschal was asleep in a van at a RV park, it seems. Shortly thereafter, police officers arrived and tried to make contact with him, and they heard a gunshot. They did not approach right away. They knew who Trent Paschal was. They had run him in NCIC, and they knew that he was out on bond for a murder and other violent crimes. Law enforcement police officers know probably the most dangerous criminal is the one that has skipped out on his bond, one that has cut his monitor off, one that has evaded law enforcement right after he gets out of jail because he knows once he goes back in, he's not going to come back out. These guys are the most dangerous. So they didn't approach for a while. When they did make the approach, they found a white male deceased in the back of the van. Matched the tattoos, photographs matched, and I believe this morning we received a report from the medical examiner's office confirming that it was Trent Pascal. Other than that, that's about the basics of what's happening. We're still waiting for supplemental reports, investigative reports, like how long he's been in Marion, Florida, what vehicle he was using. He had IDs on him. He had 2 weapons on him. We don't know what the outcome is of how he got those weapons. So everything's still being investigated. So it's definitely not a closed case as far as the investigation goes.
You know, Marshal Perez again brings up a good point. Not only was the wanted fugitive on bond forfeiture, but he also took off his ankle monitor. We have no clue how many defendants have removed their ankle monitors and are wanted, and it's about time we get answers to that. It's a bittersweet day for the family of Savannah. It's tough, and, you know, my heart goes out to them. It's been a long, arduous journey for them since the murder of their daughter, and how the criminal justice system has basically treated them with indifference, how this person has managed to get out, commit other crimes, and for over 8 months has put their lives at risk, along with God knows how many others as well. So I'm going to let them talk about, I have an utmost respect for them for never letting this case go and for continuing to do what we encourage victims' families to do, and that's get this case out in the public, because the public is our best eyes and ears out there. And it was the public, someone that recognized and found out who Trent Pascal truly was, that led to this inevitable outcome. And I'm going to ask both of them to come up, and I believe, Shirley, you're going to do some talking, and then we'll take questions.
And I'm going to try to do it without my glasses. Thanks. My name is Shirley Kinchin, and that's SHIRLEYKINCHEN. Our daughter Savannah was murdered by her husband on October 21st, 2020, after she let him know that she could no longer live with a person who was a habitual criminal and that she wanted more for their children. Trent Pascal committed suicide on January 1st rather than surrender to law enforcement. He had been on the run for 263 days when a tip, and thank God for that person, led law enforcement to his whereabouts. Did I want him to be held responsible for his actions? Did I want to look him in the eye and for him to face me again with what he had done? Yes. Am I sorry that he no longer walks on this earth? No. He is no longer a threat to my family or society. And as Andy said, we don't know who he victimized, how many he victimized. We will continue to honor our daughter's memory by fighting for bond reform and bringing light to a justice system that not only failed us and her children, but so many other victims. And there are many victims. We waited a little over a year. Many people wait decades. We will continue to speak out to bring awareness to domestic violence. We will forever be grateful to the U.S. Marshals and to Andy and Crime Stoppers for their support during the most difficult time of our lives. That's all I have to say at this moment.
At this time, we'll be more than happy to take any questions from anybody.
What was it like for you all to go more than 200 days not knowing he's on the run, not knowing what he might do to you or anybody else?
It was torture. I didn't feel in my gut, I guess, that he would come back to Texas. But I didn't think he was going to murder my daughter. We both were always looking over our shoulder. We were always, in any way possible, getting the word out. We didn't let the children out of our sight. And we had to explain to them that if there was a tiny chance of their safety, that we loved them too much to take that chance. And so that part of that burden has been lifted, but it was torture every day, every minute. I haven't had a good night's sleep since October 21st, 2020. I'm hoping that that will change in the months ahead.
What would you like to see change in regards to all the multiple bond defendants that we keep talking about?
I would like for, more monitoring. When we saw on social media that he was not complying with his strict bond restrictions, when he was spending the weekend in Galveston, when he was supposed to be under house arrest, when we were informed to let law enforcement do their work, that wasn't our, that we needed to just sit down and let them, let it be, that they had it under control. I think there needs to be stricter monitoring on the ankle monitors. Once the subpoena was done, which it was done after he committed, armed robbery or theft of the vehicle, it was found out that his ankle monitor had been on the charger at his mother's home almost 90% of the time. I know by watching the news, there are criminals out there committing murder with ankle monitors on. That is not acceptable. I think that they should look at criminal history. No, he did not have a violent criminal history, but he had a criminal history. He thumbed his nose at the justice system, the bond, protective orders. I heard him more than once say, it's just a piece of paper, it doesn't stop anything. So I would like for the judges to have more compassion and more leeway to look at criminal records of these people before they're allowed to wear an ankle monitor or to be released on bond. When do the victim's rights kick in and override the criminal's rights?
He was on bond in 2 different counties, correct?
That is correct.
I mean, on the surface, does that even make sense to you that someone can be out on bond in 2 different counties?
It does not. It does not. And he posted bond after hours. He did not even appear in Galveston County for his bond hearing.
Process called remote bonding. He bonded out of both counties at 10:30 at night and was released out on the streets the first time.
He was arrested 3 times by Friendswood, by Galveston County, and Harris County after he committed murder of my child. And he was let out every time.
He had, 5 felony warrants against him. One being assault with attempt to kill. He assaulted my wife on that day and killed our daughter. And he was in custody, as she said, 3 separate times behind bars, and the judges saw fit to release him legally on bond all 3 times, with us warning them, don't do it. He's slippery. He will not abide by the restrictions. And the 3rd time he disappeared with no monitor on and said, okay, go find him. You've got it under control. You know where he is. We found out it would take 6 to 8 weeks to dump the data off the GPS. It wasn't until almost 2 months after he had disappeared that we found out he had not been wearing that monitor most of the time. The system failed. The district attorneys worked with us as much as they could, and they argued our case for us in the courts. It was the judges who let this man go 3 separate times, knowing that he was dangerous, that he was slippery, and that he had the potential to not show up.
Not following his bond restrictions. And unfortunately, he's not the only one. And everyone needs to be aware of that. He's not the only one.
Is it concerning to you that, like Andy pointed out, we don't know how many there are. We don't know how many people out on multiple bonds are now wanted fugitives. No one seems to keep track of that.
Of course. When do we find out? When they commit another crime, when they kill somebody else. That's when we find out they were out on bond. That is unacceptable.
It sounds like the person who's the hero here is the one person who recognized him in Marion County, Florida. Have you been told anything about who that person was? Can the marshal release anything about that?
We don't have the supplement.
Yeah, the investigation's still ongoing. We want to know how long she's known him for. Did she meet him here? Did she meet him on the road? Did he meet her in Florida? We still haven't received the reports from those interviews.
So the person that called about him did know him from somewhere in Marion County? Do we know that?
They didn't. Sorry. They didn't know. The tipster didn't just recently found out who that person was. And the reason they found out who that person was because Crime Stoppers on the hunt with John Walsh and all of you guys. So the heroes are Crime Stoppers, the media, and that woman that called in the tip.
I know you're still working to figure out how long he had been in Florida. Any understanding as to what may have brought him there? May he have known someone? Or
We're still waiting. Unfortunately, that's in another jurisdiction, and we are waiting for the supplemental reports. We have the basic reports of what happened, transpired New Year's Eve into New Year's Day, early hours of New Year's Day. I can tell you, and they can tell you, that the task force, our U.S. Marshals Task Force in Galveston, never stopped looking for him. We came up with a lot of dead-end investigations, but every week there was somebody to interview. I mean, they never stopped looking for him. So I don't know if this guy felt the heat from those great investigators in Galveston, we'll never know. But the true hero in this is the tipster.
I know we found out that he had his monitor charger at his mother's house. Any contact with her? Did she have any contact with him?
Want me to answer? The marshals had interviewed her several times and continued to interview her and her husband until her death in September.
She was a victim of COVID, passed away in September.
But as far as is known, once he left last April, she had not been in contact with him.
What would you like everybody to, how'd you like Savannah to be remembered?
I would like Savannah to be remembered as an advocate for the underdog. We held a 5K walk in October near the anniversary of her death to raise money for Bay Area Turning Point and a scholarship fund that has been set up at our church camp, Disciple Oaks Retreat Center. Is that what it's called now? In her name, because it was someplace that she loved. That will be an annual event. We just want to continue to help others in a way that she did. She was working with Bay Area Turning Point. Ironically, she was working with them when she was murdered.
I would like for our daughter to be remembered as a loving and caring individual. She worked in the funeral industry, helping people deal with sorrow and tragedy and loss. She was working with Bay Area Turning Point. She was a loving mother. Her children were the light of her life. And those children are now living with us. We're raising our grandchildren, and we have the processes in place for adoption, and they will be ours. And we continue to raise them and tell them what a great person their mother was, so that she can be remembered for all of the good things that she did. Her light will not be shut off.
I'm sorry, how many children did she have?
She has two, one son, 12, and one daughter, 8.
Anything else?
Question for the marshal. Will there be any attempts, once the timeline is constructed for where he was going to reach out to those specific areas to see if there were any additional victims of his on his way to represent or being in Florida?
I believe they're trying to do that now. I mean, this guy was a career criminal, violent criminal. I mean, he got into a shootout with Harris County, and then got released on bond. So I think he was shot 6 times.
Something like that.
So and we believe that's how he was able to slip his ankle monitor off, because his leg was swollen from the trauma of the gunshots. So once the swelling went down, he just slipped it off, just plugged it into the wall.
Would it help the U.S. Marshal's Office to know how many defendants on multiple bonds are now have absconded or now fugitives? Would it help you all to know that?
We're looking for them, so we already know that, and we know how dangerous these guys are. I mean, they're fugitives. They've been charged with a violent crime already, and most of these crimes are either caught on video or there's a lot of witnesses, and they still get released. So it's not like, well, let's give this guy the benefit of the doubt. You know who you're going after when a guy's a fugitive, and he's a dangerous fugitive.
You know, like I told, Michael and Shirley, Savannah's death's not going to be in vain. And there's going to be some positive changes that are going to come out of this. And she will be a catalyst for change for so many others that are enduring someone out on bond who had forfeited their bond, and then a manhunt ensues. So, that's our pledge to you guys here, that Savannah, what happened with her, what happened over the weekend, we're going to do whatever we can to ensure that everyone out here is aware of who has violated their bond, who has a warrant out for their arrest, who has removed their ankle monitor, because they're all threats to public safety. And the quicker we rein them in, get them back in custody, the less we have to deal with situations like this. So appreciate everybody's time. And again, thank you for the media for continuing to put this out there, because as we were talking, if we don't get this story out there, chances of us being in front of you today are probably slim to none. So thank you guys for continuing to put out, messages asking for the public's help in bringing these people in where they shouldn't have been out in the first place. Thanks.